How's it going, guys? I hope you guys have a great week. So 2019 has come and gone, guys, and it's time to reflect on the past year. So today's video is actually going to focus on the Nintendo Switch. We're going to look back at Nintendo in 2019 and generally review how I thought they did, how they actually performed. So let's get to it, shall we? So actually, I thought Nintendo had a pretty good year. I actually think out of all of the big three, so Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony, that Nintendo was actually the strongest this year. So let's start off, of course, by looking at their exclusives. I think this is the area that Nintendo really dominated this year. They had so many good exclusives that came out this year. If you were a Nintendo Switch owner, you had a lot of choice in terms of games to play this year. So let's go through all the exclusives that came out on the Nintendo Switch in 2019 that are definitely worth mentioning. Of course, we had Pokemon Sword and Shield towards the back end of the year, Fire Emblem Three Houses, Luigi's Mansion 3, Astral Chain, Link's Awakening, Mario Maker 2, Ring Fit Adventure, and Yoshi's Crafted World. There were so many exclusives this year, and I'm going to focus on them in a little bit more detail shortly. But then we also had some really cool Switch ports that came across as well. So there was a lot of third-party support on the console this year, which was really cool to see. Of course, Overwatch came out this year on the Nintendo Switch. The Witcher 3 was one of the biggest releases on the Nintendo Switch, and while it doesn't look as impressive as, say, its counterpart on the PlayStation 4 or the Xbox One or definitely the PC, it's still really awesome that CD Projekt Red were able to fit such a massive game and massive title onto the Nintendo Switch, and that they were able to sort of bring that across to Nintendo fans, so they'd be able to pick up and play what is arguably one of the best RPGs of this generation, if not ever. It was incredible. Basically, it included the base game for The Witcher 3 plus all of the DLC expansions. So the value for money and the content on offer here is pretty awesome, and the ability to play The Witcher on the go as well is pretty cool as well, I have to say. So I, as a fan of The Witcher 3, I really love the fact that this moved across onto the Nintendo Switch this year. And of course, we also had Dragon Quest XI, which looked really, really good. But let's pick on some of those exclusives, because I think there were 4 exclusives this year that were absolutely fantastic, and they are actually potentially going to be in my top 10 games this year. I'm not going to say whether they are or they aren't, because that's spoilers, but these are definitely 4 of the best games that came out on the Nintendo Switch this year. Let's start off with Pokemon Sword and Shield by Game Freak. This came out, I think, in November at the back end of the year, and I really enjoyed it. It was set in a new region, in the Gala region. It was good. It was a really solid game. Actually, it's the first and only Pokemon game that I have ever played, and I think it really opened up the franchise to a lot of people like myself who have never played it. It was very accessible, very easy to sort of pick up and familiarize yourself with all the different Pokemon. I know for some hardcore Pokemon fans, they were disappointed with some things in the game. They were disappointed with, you know, the choice to remove some of the Pokemon from the main decks, but for me personally, I really enjoyed it. I loved the design of the Pokemon. I found the gameplay very accessible. I loved the setting, particularly because it was based on Great Britain. So for me, there were lots of little Easter eggs and little references that I obviously got and found really amusing and really enjoyable. And then I also really loved the new open world kind of wild area where you could sort of catch Pokemon in the wild. And I actually really enjoyed the raid system as well, and the Dynamax system, and being able to jump in on raids with your friends. So taking out some of the elements from, say, the Pokemon Go series and fitting that into the game. Now, I know some hardcore fans feel that that's kind of done down the series, but for me, I actually really enjoyed it, and it might be one of the reasons why I actually picked up and finished the game, because I've never actually finished a Pokemon game before, and I enjoyed Pokemon Sword and Shield and really enjoyed my experience with it. We then had Luigi's Mansion 3, me. I loved Luigi's Mansion 3. I thought it was really cute. I loved the gameplay dynamic. I loved the puzzle solving dynamic. I loved Luigi's different abilities and using Gooigi, the ability to actually play it cooperatively with a friend throughout the entire campaign. That was really fun. I loved the whole level design of it being in the hotel, and each level being sort of self-contained and different in theme, and all the bosses. And Luigi's Mansion 3 was just a really solid title, and I really loved it. And I love seeing Luigi center stage and getting just some sort of recognition. We then had Astral Chain, which for me was definitely a highlight of this year. That of course is by Platinum Games, and I absolutely loved it. It offers some incredible combat, some really sort of, you know, fast-paced combat as well. Really loved the world, loved the setting, found it incredibly interesting, and just really enjoyed my time with it. So Astral Chain was definitely one of the highlights of the year for me too. But the best game on the Nintendo Switch this year, without a doubt, was absolutely Fire Emblem Three Houses. That game for me was just fantastic. It was actually the first Fire Emblem game that I have ever played, and as a complete Fire Emblem noob, I will admit I am a noob, and I absolutely got addicted to this game. It just drew me in. I loved the characters, I loved the world, the setting, the gameplay, the micromanagement, all the different things that you could do sort of, you know, in the school and the different classes and interacting with all the different characters, the multiple choices that you can make and them affecting the story, the multiple endings that you can have. There is so much replay value in this game, depending on, you know, which house you choose to side with and what decisions you make as the story progresses, that this game was absolutely truly outstanding, and it's one of the highlights of the year for me, and I really enjoyed it. So I thought Nintendo had an incredibly strong lineup of games that came out this year. What I would say is the beginning part of the year, you know, spring sort of period, that was quite bare for me. There wasn't many massive game releases during that period, and then as we got into October and November, we just seemed to get all these huge, really big releases all around the same time. So it felt like a lot of these games, particularly like Pokemon Sword and Shield and Luigi's Mansion and Astral Chain, it felt like all these games were kind of competing with each other for space, which really doesn't make any sense for me, that Nintendo chose to do that. So I would have liked these releases to be a little bit more spaced out throughout the year. I think that would have been better for Nintendo, and I think they should maybe learn from that going forward into 2020. So yeah, exclusive titles on the Nintendo Switch this year were absolutely fantastic. And then of course this year with Nintendo, we actually got some hardware updates. So we actually got the Nintendo Switch Lite, which made its debut. This is obviously their handheld version of the Nintendo Switch. It was really weird to see Nintendo choose to go down this route, choosing to have something that you cannot dock. There are some benefits to having the Nintendo Switch Lite. Of course, it's got a better battery life, it's lighter, obviously it's handheld, it's portable, you can take it around very easily. The screen is a little bit smaller, it's a little bit smaller itself, so maybe it's a bit more comfortable to hold for extended periods of time. So the Nintendo Switch Lite, I can see that there definitely would be a market for that. Combined obviously with that, Nintendo also announced that they would no longer actually be producing games for the 3DS. So that very much definitely does give us an indication that Nintendo are no longer going to be supporting the 3DS, and that maybe they're going to try to push more for the Switch Lite being their new kind of portable console, and maybe that, you know, their new handheld console, and that's the way that they are going. The only downside I think with the Switch Lite is, while Nintendo did try to put a little bit more into its new Switch Online service and offering things like, you know, being able to play a roster of SNES games for free, which was really cool, but it still hasn't quite got some of the systems that we do have on the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. It doesn't have those. So for example, cloud saves is still very hit and miss on a Nintendo Switch. Not every game actually will support cloud saves, and this very much feels like something that Nintendo have to get right, that they have to resolve, particularly if they're wanting more people to jump on board and maybe pick up a Switch Lite as well as their base Nintendo Switch console, because obviously if you've got the ability to upload your saves online and then download them onto the Switch Lite, it does make, you know, transferring games and moving them across much easier, much quicker and more convenient. So definitely it feels that Nintendo still has a little ways to go and can still obviously work on improving their online service, even in terms of playing online and the stability of their servers. Still it has some issues for some people. So I know people that played on Overwatch, for example, did have some issues with it. We then had, of course, issues in terms of hardware and the infamous JoyCon Drift that seemed to affect a lot of people this year particularly, and you know, people, their Joy-Cons and not working correctly, and we're only sort of, you know, two years into its life cycle, 2 or 3 years into its life cycle. So it's really sad to see, you know, Nintendo hardware really not performing to the standards that we are used to for Nintendo. Nintendo did start to sort of offer a little bit of support for those people that have had issues with Joy-Con Drift, and have given them the ability to send these in to be repaired, but this support is really limited in terms of region. So if you're in North America, you can do that, but it doesn't extend to Europe, it doesn't extend to the United Kingdom, and that's really frustrating to see. We then of course had a couple of really cool decisions made by Nintendo this year. So finally Nintendo decided to drop its creators program and to actually change its policies in terms of YouTube and copyright claims. Finally, it seems that Nintendo have actually realized the potential benefit and the opportunity that lies in YouTube for free advertising, and have stopped their what were previously considered really archaic policies in terms of copyright claims and that kind of thing. And that's been really awesome this year, because it has meant that YouTubers have been able to produce content, you know, free of worry, without worrying that their videos are going to be blocked or copyright claimed. And it does mean going forward that I'm going to be able to actually cover more Nintendo Switch titles and review more games coming up in 2020, because of course next year, while we haven't got massive announcements on definite games, there were a couple of reveals this year that were very exciting. So we know in 2020 Animal Crossing is definitely coming at the beginning of 2020 in the first quarter. We do know at some point we're going to get a Metroid Prime 4, which I'm super hyped for. Although we did hear this year that actually Metroid Prime 4 has been started over from scratch in terms of development. And then obviously we do know that at some point we are going to get Breath of the Wild 2, and that was a huge announcement this year at E3 during their E3 Direct. Their Directs this year were really, really good. I actually thought Nintendo had a good year in terms of their Nintendo Directs, and the announcement of a Breath of the Wild 2 will have many people, including myself, incredibly excited, because obviously Breath of the Wild was an amazing title, and I can't wait to see where that story is going to go, and it just looks really, really awesome. So generally speaking, Nintendo had a pretty good year. They had a strong lineup of exclusive games, which was really awesome. Some really positive changes as well in terms of their online policies towards copyright claims and YouTube, and it looks promising going into 2020. We don't know big titles coming out in 2020 bar Animal Crossing, so hopefully we will hear a little bit more at the beginning of the year. But generally speaking, I thought Nintendo actually had a really strong year, and probably were the strongest out of the big three. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. What do you guys think of the Nintendo Switch's performance this year and of the exclusive titles that came out? Which games did you play? Which did you enjoy? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please show your support by liking the video, commenting and subscribing. And if you would like to support the channel going forward long term, you can do so by either jumping over onto my Patreon, following me on Twitter, following me on Twitch, because I do live stream every Wednesday and every Sunday, and also you can actually become a member of the channel and join the N7 family. and support the channel in that way. But anyway, you can support the channel is obviously massively appreciated. Anyway, I hope you guys have a great week. Take care, and as always, happy gaming. Bye guys.